point about last night. Because after we had a discussion of, when I introduced the distinction between signification and significance, and we had quite an animated discussion about the degree to which one was subjective and the other one was objective. And I was a little confused during the discussion because I never actually got those questions. And then when coming back to my hotel, I realized that I may have introduced some misleading ideas to begin with when I introduced that distinction. Because I said, well, one is about meaning in terms of definitions and disambiguations. The other one is about meaning as when one says, my life has no meaning. And of course, with that particular example, my life has no meaning or my life has no significance, I don't make a difference in the life of others, it does seem completely subjective because it's, what gives meaning to, different people's lives, what different people consider to be significant or what different people would consider to be having done an important thing in life is, in fact, entirely subjective. So let me just give other examples so that I don't, because that was my fault. It's a good way of introducing it, but of course it does introduce the idea that if significance is all about the significance of your life, of your achievements, of your role in society, then clearly significance would be extremely subjective. Now, so before we go on, the most important use of questions of what is significant, what is important, what is relevant, is not so much in defining your life as in the question of giving explanations for things, not interpretations. Interpretations have to do with meaning in the first sense, with meaning in terms of definitions and disambiguations, as when you're interpreting a text or when you're interpreting riddles, like in the Da Vinci Code, when the guy is interpreting riddles to get to different, as cues to get to different places, you are, of course, dealing with meanings in the sense of semantic content. And that is interpretation. Explanations are always answers to why questions. Why did the economy collapse a year ago? Why is there different power relations or different distributions of wealth among different communities in society? Why, any question why, the answer to a question why is not an interpretation, it's always an explanation. Now, in physics, chemistry and biology, explanations are always framed in terms of causes. You ask, why did this particular species evolve? Why did this particular molecule react with this other particular molecule to create another molecule? Or why did this particular gravitational force affect this particular planet in this particular way? You're going to give an explanation in terms of physics, you're going to give an explanation in terms of chemistry, you're going to give an explanation in terms of biology, and those explanations, when they're about the objective world, are always framed in terms of causes. Or causal mechanisms, if you want to. What is a cause? A cause is an event that produces another event. So to take the simplest example, an example that everybody always uses to illustrate causes, you're playing billiards, you hit one ball, and then that ball is going to hit another ball. So the event collision between the two balls, that's the causal. That's the event that plays the role of cause, is going to produce another event. What's the other event? A change in the position of one of the balls and a change in the movement of the first ball. Let's say that there's one ball going here, there's another ball coming here, the ball is motionless. This one hits one, that hitting, that collision is one event. The second event is this one starts moving and this one changes direction. Any change, a change in position, a change in direction is an event. A collision is an event. And so a cause and effect relationship is always a productive relationship in nature, in which one event produces another event. So when asked for explanations in physics, for explanations in biology, for explanations in chemistry, we always give causes. either one single events that produce other events, or a series of events that produce other series of events, more complex causal mechanisms. They are always the answer to the question, why? Why did that ball move? Because it was hit by the first ball. Why did the first ball change movement? Well, because he lost some of its energy hitting the first ball, and that made it change in its direction. So significance, importance, relevance come into explanation because you always have to identify what the relevant factors in the explanation are. And in the case of physics, biology, and chemistry, those are always objective factors. So I should have introduced the question of significance that way yesterday instead of the meaning of my life, because that immediately threw you, I know, into thinking that it was something entirely subjective. Sometimes it is subjective, sometimes, as in the case of billiard balls, it's entirely objective. There's a specific physical cause, a collision that has nothing to do with my mind and nothing to do with anyone's mind. When you move to the subject matter of today, which is explanations in the social realm, you need to add, in addition to causes are still there, because when you're talking about industrial processes, for instance, and you ask, why did this particular machine break down? Or why this particular machine